This story starts with a husband abandoning his bleeding wife and newborn son for a secret vacation with another woman. But it ends with him stand in mud, broke, fired, blocked, and under federal investigation. Sarah never chased him. She never begged. She simply followed the money, protect her child, sold the house he thought he owned, and vanished behind gates he could not enter. Marcus left for paradise thinking he had escaped responsibility. He came home to find out his entire life had been dismantled by the woman he underestimated.
I am Sarah, 32. My husband left me and our newborn for a vacation. When he begged to return, I had already cleared the house. Where are you watching from? Subscribe if you have ever destroyed a toxic partner. 3-week-old Liam was wailing. I stood in the doorway, clutching my belly. Pain sliced through my stitches. Fresh blood soaked the bandage. I was shaking, terrified, and drained. Nearby, my husband, Marcus, packed swim trunks. The suitcase zipper was louder than the baby. Marcus ignored Liam, checked his hair, and grabbed his gear. I pleaded, "Marcus, you cannot leave. I am bleeding. Liam has a fever. I am struggling." He sighed, treating me like dirt. "I need a break, Sarah," he snapped. "I am a lead architect supporting this family. You just sit around all. I hear is crying. I am off to Maui for 2 weeks to clear my head. Do not call, unless it is an emergency." He walked out, slamming the door. I flinched, watching his black BMW speed away. I am a forensic accountant who hunts financial fraud, yet I was a mess on the floor. I grew up in foster care, fighting for every dollar before I met Marcus. I thought his charm meant he would be a great father. Instead, he left me hurting while he went to party. I held Liam close, sobbing into his blanket. Every breath was agony. The doctor required total rest. Marcus knew this. He had acted like the perfect husband in the hospital. It was a show. Once home, the reality of a crying infant killed the act. We lived in a $2 million home. Marcus bragged about the custom design to everyone. What he didn't know, what his ego never checked, was that the house was mine. I bought it via a trust years ago. His name was nowhere on the deed. But in the nursery, looking at the driveway, my money felt worthless. It could not stop the bleeding or make him love our son. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. I almost called for help, then took a breath, realizing the wound was just from stress. I cleaned it, holding my newborn. After an hour, Liam slept. I laid him down and felt a cold, sharp clarity. The tears stopped. The panic vanished, replaced by icy focus. Marcus thought I was weak and would wait. He forgot who he married. I make a living exposing frauds, and he just handed me the match to burn his life down. 3 hours since he left, I sat in the glider, breathing through the pain in my stitches. Then the front door clicked. I froze. My heart pounded. Marcus had barely reached the airport. Before I could process it, heels clicked on the floor. It was my mother-in-law, Linda, and her daughter, Chloe. They used the spare key I was foolish enough to give them. They marched past the baby, ignoring him. I gritted my teeth against the searing pain and went to face the mess. I found them in my kitchen. Linda was wrapping the cord of my high-end espresso machine around her arm. Chloe was ripping the parts off. "What are you doing in my house?" I asked, leaning on the frame while my legs shook. Linda did not look up. "Marcus called us from the terminal," she said. "He needs space from the noise. You are breastfeeding, so no caffeine. Chloe needs this for her party." I was stunned. "You are stealing my coffee maker because your son abandoned his bleeding wife and sick infant to drink in Hawaii?" I asked. My voice cold, despite the rage. Chloe laughed. "Stop the drama, Sarah. Marcus is the breadwinner. He is under pressure keeping a roof over you. Let him have a vacation." Linda turned to face me. Her eyes swept over my baggy sweatpants. "Look at yourself, Sarah," she sneered. "You have let yourself go." No wonder Marcus had to escape. Men like him deserve better. You grew up with nothing in foster care, so you do not understand the pressure on a winner. You should be grateful he ever looked your way. The cruelty stung, but the attack on my past was a new low. My hands balled into fists, nails digging deep. I wanted to scream. I wanted them out, but my forensic brain clicked on. Emotion is the enemy of strategy. I took a breath and forced my hands open. "Take the machine," I said, my tone deadly. "Take it and leave. Drop the key on the island." Linda smirked, thinking she had won. She dropped the key with a loud clink. "See, Chloe?" Linda said, lifting the heavy machine. She can be reasonable when she knows her place. They walked out, slamming the door. I stood alone in the kitchen. They thought they were stripping my dignity. They had no idea they were sealing their own fate. The silence was heavy. I stood still, listening to the hum of the fridge where my machine used to be. The rush faded, leaving a dull ache. I needed to sit. I walked down the hall, skipping the nursery, and pushed into our shared office. The room was divided. My side was neat with dual monitors. Marcus occupied the other half. His desk was a disaster. Piles of mail, old cups, and total chaos. He claimed his creative genius needed the mess. I sank into his chair, my body aching from the surgery. I wanted to cry. I had ignored the warning signs and let his toxic family walk all over me. While I sat in misery, my elbow bumped a stack of files. The pile crashed down, scattering everywhere. I held my breath, praying. Lim did not wake up. As I reached to clean the mess, I saw it, his old tablet, he said. He tossed it, but he had it tucked away, plugged in. When the folders hit it, the screen woke up. A bright notification cut through the dark. I grabbed the device, wincing as the move pulled at my stitches. A message from Tiffany, his 22-year-old assistant. He always called her useless. I stared at the screen, my heart stopping. The text read: "The hotel in Mai is ready, Daddy." I absolutely cannot wait. The air left my lungs. My chest felt like it was caving in. He was not on a mental health retreat. He was on a tropical getaway with a woman 10 years younger than me. He used my recovery as a cover to abandon his newborn. My tears stopped cold. The sadness vanished. The hurt wife died in that chair, in her place. The forensic accountant woke up. I do not cry when I find red flags. I do not scream when I uncover hidden accounts. I just track the paper trail and build an airtight case. Marcus was not my husband anymore. He was a fraud case, and he had just made a huge mistake. He never logged out of his Apple ID. Every text, photo, and bank statement was syncing to this device. I set the tablet on the desk, no password needed. I went to my own station and powered up my monitors. Time to follow the money. The blue light washed over the room as I got to work. Marcus was predictable. He thought he was smart, but his security was a joke. I mirrored his tablet to my screen. He used the same simple password for everything: his birth year, his old frat letters, and a mark. I was in as an expert. My eyes are trained to spot the tiny holes in the data. I searched for flights and bookings. Receipts for the Maui trip appeared. First-class tickets, a luxury suite for 2 weeks, fine dining. The cost was massive, but the payment source was the real shocker. It was not his card or our joint account. I opened our banking app to track that routing number. I dug into our private sub-accounts and felt my blood run cold. It was Liam's college fund. I had started that account before we were even married, growing up in foster care with nothing. I was determined to give my son a future. I had poured every bonus I ever earned into that fund. Marcus barely added a cent, always saying he needed his commission for our lifestyle. When Lionel was born 3 weeks ago, I made it a custodial fund. Since Marcus was the father, the bank added him as a signer. The balance now, 0. I checked the logs 3 days ago. While I was recovering from surgery, he drained it. He stole $80,000 from his own son. He tried to hide it in a holding account, but money always leaves a trail. I tracked the emails. $10,000 went to the Maui trip with Tiffany. That meant $70,000 was still missing. I felt sick. He was not just cheating, he was funding his secret life with our son's future. While I was recovering in the hospital, he was planning how to cover his tracks. He thought I would be too tired to notes wrong. I saved every PDF, every email, every receipt. I put them in an encrypted file. I was not just a wife anymore. I was building a federal case. I just needed to find that missing $70,000. If it was not for the trip, it was an asset. I went back to his messages. The autopsy of his life had begun. I looked at the holding account where he hid the rest of the stolen money. Marcus was not a genius. He was sloppy. I saw a transfer to a new limited liability company. I scanned the state registry. Minutes later, the documents appeared. He named it Blue Sky Holdings, created just weeks before Liam was born. The arrogance was blinding, but I stayed sharp. The funds moved 48 hours ago, not to crypto or a standard bank, to a luxury dealership in the city. Marcus wired the stolen money to a car dealer. My fingers blurred as I accessed our internal fraud portal. I entered the transfer details. The system flagged a match and used Mercedes-Wagen. The price tag hit 100 grand, a huge down payment with a high interest loan. I checked the registration. The owner was not Marcus. It was his assistant, Chloe. He used the college fund I started for our son to buy her a luxury ride. His affair was one thing. Infidelity is a moral flaw, but this is a felony. He forged bank records and gutted a custodial account to impress some girl. Every cent was earned through my late nights, building a life I never had as a kid. I leaned back. I scanned the car registration on my phone. Pain vanished, replaced by cold fury. My husband thought he was a genius, emptying our accounts to bolt for Mexico. He forgot one thing. I am a forensic accountant. I know exactly how to bury a liar. I saved every shell company file, bank receipt, and proof of his girlfriend S ownership. I built a case that was bulletproof. No lawyer could justify moving a newborn's savings into a mistress's luxury SUV. It was pure financial abuse. My tablet buzzed a photo from her, lounging on a jet with champagne, thanking my husband for the flight. I smirked. Time to strike. I dialed his number, the line connected to loud club music and clinking glasses. He sounded annoyed. "I told you, Sienna, don't call me unless it's a real emergency. Why are you bothering me?" "I'm out with the guys, and you're killing the mood." I didn't yell. I kept my tone flat, just like I do when I grill fraud suspects at work. "You aren't networking, Tyler. You're in a Tullum suite with your assistant while you played sugar daddy. I traced your shell company." The music pounded, but the line went silent. He panicked, guessing what I knew. When he finally spoke, he let out a patronizing laugh. "Good Lord, Sienna, listen to yourself! The doctors warned me about postpartum hormones, but I never thought you'd lose your mind like this." "You are truly delusional." I ignored his gaslighting. "Save it, Tyler. I know everything. You forged those documents, drained 60,000 from our son's trust and laundered it to buy her a car," he scoffed. "You re-embarrassing yourself, that S. Why you re-stuck in a cubicle while I make the real money? That cash is in a lucrative investment. The returns will be massive. I moved it to grow our wealth since you re too timid. And the car," he continued, ignoring my protest. "My assistant is handling paperwork while I run this firm. It's a tax. Write-off. You re just exhausted, letting your hormones invent a fairy tale." "She isn't in Mexico. I am with friends. Log off, take your pills and sleep." His ability to lie without blinking was chilling. If I were just a tired mother who didn't know how fraud worked, his gaslighting might have held up. But I had the registration proof right here. "You're a liar, Tyler," I said steadily. "I have every receipt, the incorporation papers, the title you stole from your own son." The fake amusement vanished. The music faded as his breathing sharpened. The doting husband mask shattered, revealing the vicious narcissist underneath. He realized I wasn't backing down. The noise muffled as he ducked into a quiet corner. He moved to the balcony so his mistress wouldn't hear his rage. When he spoke, his voice was a low, dangerous hiss. "Listen to me, you ungrateful psycho. You think you re-smart because you can read a bank statement? All you've proven is that you re a paranoid, unstable woman who can handle a baby." I stayed silent, letting him dig his own hole. My silence fueled his rage. He wanted a messy explosion to justify his toxicity, but I gave him nothing. He spiraled, admitting to everything while playing the victim. "Yes, he bought her. The car. We are in Mexico," he bragged. "You want to know why? Because she actually respects me. She treats me like a boss. You've been cold for months." "I deserve to enjoy the life I built. If you think you can ruin me over pocket change, you re-insane," he paced. "Here is how this goes. Delete those files, log out of my accounts, and shut your mouth. If you make a scene, contact my firm, or call my mother. I will rain hell on you." His threats were surgical. He went for my deepest fears. "I will hire the most ruthless lawyer in the state," he spat. "I am filing for divorce today. I'll use your medical records against you. You re-on meds from your surgery, right? I'll tell the judge you have postpartum psychosis and are a danger to the child. You'll be lucky to get supervised visits. A chill hit me, not from fear but from the sheer cruelty. He was threatening to steal my newborn, using my labor trauma against me. And the money, he added, delivering the checkmate. That house is a marital asset. I don't care about your family trust. I'll force a judge to sell the property, liquidate everything, and leave you with nothing. You'll be right back in the gutter? Now watch the kid and wait for me. Understood. I stared at the monitors and breathed. He thought intimidation worked on a forensic accountant holding hard evidence. I started to speak, but he cut me off. Don't speak. Just listen, 2 weeks. Be a good wife and have dinner ready when I get home. The line went dead. He had drawn his battle lines. I reached for my encrypted drive, ready to call my brother-in-law for help. Suddenly the front doorbell rang. I froze. My mind raced. Was it his mother coming back to steal more? An officer for a welfare check? I stood up slowly, wincing as my stitches pulled. I walked to the security feed. I checked the camera. It wasn't his mother or the police. Standing on the porch, looking stressed, was my brother-in-law, Marcus. He was a solid, tech-savvy guy who never fit in with Tyler's shallow family. He held 2 bags of Thai food and a massive box of diapers. I unlocked the deadbolt. Marcus let out a breath when he saw me. "See," he said, his voice full of genuine concern. "Sorry to show up like this. Let me bring this in." I stepped aside as he walked into the kitchen. He set the bags on the island where my stolen espresso machine used to sit. Marcus looked at me with total disgust. "I came home early," he explained, keeping his voice low. "I found your espresso machine on my counter. When I confronted my wife, she bragged about using a spare key to clear out your house. She said, 'Tyler left for Mexico and they wanted to teach you a lesson.'" He shook his head. "I was furious, Sienna. I packed up the machine, but then I realized you needed food and diapers more than coffee. What they did today, what Tyler is doing by abandoning you, is unforgivable. I'm so sorry you married into this nightmare." I felt a wave of relief. In a family of narcissists, Marcus was the only one with a moral compass. He was the only one who saw through Tyler's golden boy act. "Thanks, Marcus," I whispered, leaning against the counter. "You have no idea how much I needed this. Tyler just called from Tulum." He threatened to take custody of the baby and force a home sale if I exposed the affair. Marcus didn't look shocked. His jaw tightened and a dark look crossed his face. He reached into his jacket. He didn't grab his keys. He kept his hand inside, staring at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The friendly brother-in-law was gone, replaced by a seasoned security lead. "I'm glad. I brought dinner," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "I'm glad you re-prepping for a legal fight, but bringing groceries isn't the only reason I drove here. I came for something else." He stepped closer, glancing toward the hallway. "I work in high-level network security," he continued softly. "Because my wife is reckless with her devices. I monitor our home network to protect my professional data. Today, I intercepted an encrypted file Tyler forwarded to her for safekeeping. You need to sit down, Sienna. What I found is much worse than an affair." I sat at the island. My abdomen throbbed, but the adrenaline kept me sharp. Marcus pulled a black thumb drive from his jacket. He slid it across the marble toward me. Staring at the screen, I knew these files would change my life forever. I found his laptop traced $60,000 to a car dealer for his mistress, and he confessed. Marcus shook his head. "That is child's play. I monitor network traffic. Your husband has 0 sense of digital privacy. He leaves his laptop open and loves unsecured servers. While you were hospitalized, his mistress bragged about a plan for his wealth. She claimed he was tired of your salary and control. While she slept, I scanned her network and found a treasure trove of his emails. He told her to hide those files so you would never find them." Marcus pointed to the thumb drive. "He is trying to steal our home equity, Sienna." I laughed. "The house is in a trust I set up before we met." Marcus leaned in. "I know, but Tyler clearly does not. Those files prove he is secretly taking out a second mortgage. He applied for a $100,000 loan. Using both your names, my stomach dropped. I realized the horror he forged my signature on the application." Marcus nodded. "He copied your signature from old tax returns." He even submitted fake statements showing I signed while I was in surgery having our baby. The funds were set to hit his account by next week. My forensic brain kicked in. Adultery is a messy divorce, but forgery across state lines, that is federal wire fraud. He went from a bad husband to a federal criminal. Marcus tapped the drive. This has every forged document and the IP addresses he used. I grabbed the drive. Thank you, Marcus. This is all the ammo I need to put him in a federal cage. Marcus did not offer empty comfort. He just promised to testify, hugged me, and left. I did not sleep. I spent the night building my case. By sunrise, I was ready. I dialed Veronica, Pierce, not just a divorce lawyer, but a ruthless former federal prosecutor. She was lethal in court, exactly who I needed to destroy him. I hired a nurse for the baby and drove to her office. I placed my laptop and that black thumb drive on her desk. I did not cry. I laid out the financial facts like a cold, calculating professional. I showed her the drained savings, the shell firms, and the forged mortgage. Veronica scanned every detail. A predator's smile hit her face. "Miller is a total fool, Sienna." She leaned back. "He just handed us a weapon. We aren't just divorcing him, we are erasing him." He messed with a forensic accountant. Big mistake. I locked my digital life down, moved my paychecks to a private account, and froze my credit to kill his loan request before it even started. Then I drained half our joint savings, leaving him his fair share. I cancelled every primary credit card on my screen, watching those platinum cards go dead. Pure, cold satisfaction. I kept quiet so he'd stay on that beach, thinking he was the mastermind. I became a ghost in my own marriage. He thought he was playing me from miles away. He had no clue. His life was collapsing while he was out celebrating. But I wasn't done. I was going to burn his professional life to the ground. Miller loved bragging about his corporate shortcuts. He didn't know they were his tomb. I found his fatal error, $60,000 parked in a fake vendor account he controlled. He was laundering stolen cash into luxury cars through company accounts. I found the digital trail. He ran fake mortgage apps through his own network, dragging his employer into a massive federal fraud case. Pure, arrogant stupidity. If the feds traced a director to felony forgery, the firm would face huge fines. They'd have to fire him to save their own hides. I built a wrecking ball of a whistleblower report. I made the dossier look like a standard federal audit. Cold, clinical. I sent it from an offshore server so it wouldn't sound like a scorned wife, but a concerned auditor. I sent it to his HR director, the CFO, and the ethics board. I detailed his money laundering and wire fraud, adding a final warning: investigate him now, or I go to the federal authorities. My finger hovered over the mouse. I thought of Miller threatening to take my son. Click. The email went out by Monday. While he was sipping drinks with his mistress, he'd be finished. They'd wipe his laptop and turn it into evidence. His career was toast. The trap was sprung. Now for the fun part, making sure he had nothing to come home to. I needed the house sale to move fast. Then, a pounding at the door, I checked the camera. Eleanor, in a designer suit, looking impatient and ready for a fight. She brought 2 movers with a truck in my driveway. I cracked the door with the chain still locked. "What do you want, Eleanor?" I asked. My voice ice cold. She sighed. "Open up, Sarah," she barked. "I need that antique dining table for a party tomorrow," she said. "Miller told me to take it." I stared at her. "I bought that table with my own money 3 years ago." "It cost $12,000. You aren't taking it, Eleanor," I told her. She sneered. "It isn't your house, Sarah. Miller pays the mortgage. He makes the rules. Open the door." I didn't budge. "Leave now," I whispered. She started screaming, calling me a crazy, hoarding lunatic for the whole neighborhood to hear. She pulled out her phone to call the police. She expected me to panic. I just smiled. "Go ahead," I said. "Call them. Tell them. You're breaking in here to steal my furniture while my infant son is sleeping inside." Let's see how they like that. Before she could answer, a cruiser rumbled down the street, lights flashing. Eleanor looked smug. "You going to jail?" she snapped. The movers backed off. Eleanor turned on the waterworks for the officers. "My daughter-in-law is unstable," she cried. The tall officer ignored her, looking right at me. "Are you Sarah?" I nodded. He turned to Eleanor, checking a thick file. He shoved a stack of papers into her chest. Eleanor, you are officially served with an emergency restraining order. You must stay 500 feet from Sarah, her son, and this property. The judge granted this due to your harassment. Eleanor gasped, her jaw hitting the ground. I'm just getting a table! Leave in 60 seconds or you're under arrest, the officer warned. The movers bolted. Eleanor stood frozen, humiliated as the neighbors watched her reputation shatter. Her face turned bright red. She grabbed her files and ran for her SUV. Before she pulled away, she glared with pure hatred. Miller will destroy you, she shrieked. I just smiled. I doubt that, Brenda, I whispered. I locked the gate and headed to the nursery, time to sell this place out from under them. I opened my laptop to my secret trust, Zenith. I built it years before I met Miller. Growing up in foster care taught me one thing: always have your own safety net. He never checked the title when I bought this $1.2 million estate in cash. He assumed it was a marital asset. He was dead wrong. The deed was in my trust. I needed a buyer for Speed. I found a corporate firm known for aggressive cash buys. I told the director I was the sole trustee and wanted an immediate sale. I offered a massive discount for a 5-day close with no inspections. When I named the figure, his greed took over. By the afternoon, the contract was in my inbox. I signed as the trustor and postai escrow. 5 days later, while Miller was posting fake vacation photos, a massive wire transfer hit my account. The deal was done. The house didn't belong to me, and it certainly wasn't his. It was sold to a firm that specialized in teardowns. I sat in my study. No sentiment left, just 48 hours to clear out. I hired a packing crew to box up everything that was legally mine. They moved like lightning while I directed the chaos. I felt nothing as my nursery turned into cardboard boxes. I gave the crew one rule: touch nothing of his. By day 12, the trucks were loaded. I walked through the empty house holding my son. It felt hollow and finally ready. I took a final look at the master suite. Those designer suits hung in the closet, waiting for a man who wouldn't be returning to a subservient wife. He expected a home-cooked dinner. Instead, he would find his life in ruins. I signed the last manifest, watched the moving trucks pull away, and waited for the demo crew. The wait was brief. 20 minutes later, heavy machinery rumbled onto the street. The firm was efficient. They had tight schedules to meet. A foreman with heavy ink and a crowbar climbed down, asking for the keys. I didn't hesitate. I walked over and handed them right to him. He tipped his hat, and his crew swarmed inside. I stood on the curb, rocking my baby, watching them dismantle Grant's pride and joy. The sound of destruction, the crashing metal, the splintering drywall was deafening. Honestly, it was the sweetest music I had ever heard after years of his choking lies. Through the glass, I watched the foreman swing a sledgehammer into the marble kitchen island. It shattered. Another worker ripped the custom cabinetry off the walls. They were gutting the place to the studs, that antique chandelier he bragged about, tossed straight into a metal dumpster. Dust coated every surface, settling over his expensive suits like ash. The sanctuary was now a hazardous sight. His fake world was crumbling to dust. I secured my babies in his seat, walked to my SUV, and drove away without looking back. I left that neighborhood behind, heading deep into the hills. My new home wasn't just a house, it was a secure fortress for someone who valued privacy above all. I pulled up to the wrought iron gates. No simple keypad here. A guard stepped from a bulletproof booth. I held up my id, and as he scanned it, a camera registered my features, linking me to my new villa. The gates swung open. I drove down the private road, shaded by oak trees, feeling the weight of the old life lift. My new place was a glass and steel masterpiece, hidden from the world. Walking inside with Liam, the contrast was jarring. The movers had already unpacked everything. My table was set, my desk was ready, and Liam's nursery was set up exactly as it had been before. It was perfect. I laid my son down in his bed. The knot of anxiety in my chest finally loosened. Grant and his toxic family couldn't just walk in here. They couldn't even clear the gates. We were safe, but he was still in Mexico, thinking he could call and threaten me. I walked to my office, sat down, and reached for my phone. Time to scrub my digital footprint. I cancelled my old number, ordered a new phone on an encrypted plan, and snapped the old SIM card in half. I deleted my social accounts, everything. I wiped every trace that Grant or his sister could use to find me. In their world, I simply ceased to exist. I was a ghost. Checking my calendar, it was Friday evening. Grant lands Sunday afternoon. In under 48 hours, his car will drop him off at the house he thinks he still owns. He will expect a quiet wife and more lies about his schemes. Instead, he is walking into a construction zone. He will find his clothes ruined and a crew ready to throw him off the property. I spent 12 days cutting every tie to his abuse, protecting my son, and alerting the authorities to his fraud. The trap is set. All I have to do is sit back in this fortress, hold my boy, and wait for Grant to blow it all up. My nightmare ended, and his was just beginning. A black SUV rolled down my old street. In the back, Marcus slumped, hiding bloodshot eyes behind designer shades. He looked tan from his trip, but reeked of cheap tequila and cologne. During the ride, he rehearsed the brutal speech he would give the second he walked through the door. He expected to find me sobbing on the sofa, crushed by his latest legal threats. He thought his mind games had won. I hadn't sent a single text or call since our last fight to his arrogant mind. My silence meant total surrender. He assumed I had buried the financial records and stayed his obedient wife. He smirked, tapping his shoes. He planned to critique the house temperature, and whatever dinner I made, he wanted to dominate the room the moment he hit our hardwood. Up front, the driver frowned at his GPS. The map said they were there, but the view didn't look like a luxury street. "We are here, sir," he said, pulling over. "Looks like a massive demolition project." Marcus scoffed, annoyed by the delay. He figured a neighbor was just doing some landscaping. He pulled off his shades and peered out the window. His smirk vanished, replaced by sheer horror. He rubbed his hungover eyes, sure he was hallucinating. He was staring at the lot where our $1 million home once stood. The address was right, but the house was gone. The lawn was churned into a mud pit by heavy tires. 2 rusted dumpsters sat in the yard, overflowing with broken drywall and pipes. Marcus stumbled out, his expensive shoes sinking into wet sludge. His jaw dropped. The custom mahogany door was gone, replaced by a flapping plastic tarp. The windows were ripped out, leaving gaping, jagged holes. The driver dumped his bags on the curb and sped off. Marcus didn't notice. He froze on the sidewalk, listening to the thud of sledgehammers. Dust drifted from the frames, coating his jacket. "This cannot be right," he muttered, his voice shaking with panic. He frantically checked his phone, praying the driver had brought him to the wrong location. The blue dot on his screen was dead center on his own property. He looked back up at the wreckage. His expensive Italian marble was sitting inside a dumpster. He grabbed his heavy suitcase and trudged up the ruined walkway, sinking deep into the mud. Every step felt like a nightmare. A circular saw screeched from upstairs, showering him with dust. He reached the porch, dropping his bag. His hands shook as he pulled back the plastic tarp. He stepped inside, and a cloud of dust choked him. When the air cleared, his blood ran cold. The pristine living room he left 14 days ago was gone. The marble island was rubble. The hardwood floors were ripped up, leaving only raw, exposed subflooring. Wires hung from the ceiling. Marcus stumbled back, clutching his head in disbelief. "No, this cannot be happening," he screamed, his voice drowned out by the machines. He spun around, looking for any sign of me, our son, or his furniture. There was nothing. "Hey!" a voice barked from the hallway. "You cannot be in here. This is a commercial demolition site." A giant foreman loomed over, gripping a crowbar. He eyed Marcus with pure disgust. "Get a hard hat or clear out before I call the cops." The man stepped closer. Marcus puffed his chest, faking executive authority. "Don't you dare call anyone," he yelled, his voice straining. "I will handle the police myself. This is my home. I live here with my wife. Stop this right now, or I will sue your company into the ground." The machines died, and the silence hit hard. The foreman just laughed. "Your house?" he scoffed. "Nobody lives here. The owner cleared it out 4 days ago and handed me the keys." Our firm bought this plot with cash. Deal closed last week. You are standing on commercial property. That is a lie, Marcus snapped, face turning crimson. My name is on the mortgage. My wife can't sell marital property without me. I will destroy you. The foreman unhooked his crowbar and pulled out a legal document. He shoved it at Marcus. I don't care about your drama, he said coldly. Only the deed matters. We bought this from Zenith Holdings. The trustee signed, cleared the wire transfer, and gave us possession. Your name isn't here. Marcus snatched the paper. His eyes darted across the text. Zenith Holdings. The trust I set up years ago. I totally forgot about it. The reality crashed down. I sold the house while he was lounging on the beach. He owned nothing. The foreman grabbed his jacket. Get moving, he growled. You have 10 seconds to grab that suitcase and clear my curb before I dump you in the trash. Marcus stumbled, ripped the tarp, and face-planted into wet mud. His silver case tipped, splashing sludge over his suit. He knelt in the muck while the crew hammered away, his life dissolving. Shaking, he grabbed his phone. His first instinct was to call me to scream and demand answers about why I dumped our home. He tapped my name, heart thumping against his ribs in cold panic. A robotic voice cut in. That number is disconnected. He stared, stunned. He tried again. Same result. The truth sank in. I hadn't just sold the house, I had erased myself from his world. I was ghost. He needed me, but had no idea where to start. He skipped work Monday, had to find a lawyer and track me down. Panicked, he messaged Richard, his HR lead. Wiping mud off his face, he tried to sound like a calm exec with a minor issue. Phone rang twice. Richard answered. Mark spoke up fast. I need more leave, he said. My wife had a breakdown and trashed our property. Need a week to fix this legal mess. The silence was heavy. Then Richard spoke ice cold. Mark, you have no leave, he said flatly. You were fired for cause. 8 hours ago, access is cut. Security wiped your laptop. Mark froze, his face turning grey. Fired? He choked out. How? I am a director! You cannot fire me on vacation! You will not be suing anyone, Richard snapped. Friday, the board got a whistleblower report. It proved you used vendor accounts to launder $80,000. You dragged the company into federal wire fraud. The board voted to dump you immediately to stop the fallout. Mark felt the ground shift. The lie he told me blew up in his face. Whoever sent that report knew everything, Richard continued. We gave our evidence to the FBI. They are investigating now. If you step on this property, you will be arrested. Do not call again. The line went dead. Mark stared at his phone, sweating and filthy. The feds had his logs. His career crumbled instantly. Not a director, a federal suspect. He eyed the site. The foreman grinned, tapping a crowbar against his palm. Mark bolted, bag in hand. He sprinted 3 blocks until his legs quit, collapsing on a bus bench, gasping for air. He needed a move. He opened a luxury hotel site, desperate for a suite. Punching in his platinum card, he hit confirm. A bright red error flashed. Transaction declined. Contact your bank. Marks scowled, rubbing his burning, tired eyes. Maybe they flagged his card after the trip. He tried his corporate gold. Same error. Panic surged. Opening his banking app with Face ID, a massive red warning blocked his screen. All joint accounts were frozen solid. A notice cited a judicial freeze, a court order for wire fraud and forgery. I had used the law to lock every cent. He was at financial zero. No home, no job, no cash. His arrogance finally shattered. Desperate for cash, he messaged Madison. Madison, it is Mark. My wife locked me out. I am on the street. Can you wire a few grand for a lawyer? I will pay you back double. He watched the status. His phone chirped. Madison sent no kindness, just a photo. Mark clicked, his stomach dropping. It was the Porsche he had bought her, sitting on a tow truck. A text followed. You pathetic liar. The bank took it. The money was stolen. My credit is ruined. You are a criminal. Stay away, or I am calling the police. She blocked him. Alone, broke, and frozen out, Mark was helpless. He could not afford a bus. He walked 5 miles to his master's house, dragging his luggage over rough pavement. Clutching his designer bag, his body ached from stress and terror. Drivers glared, stripping away his dignity. Reaching his mother's upscale street at dusk, he hammered on the door. It swung open. Brenda and Chloe stood there, faces like stone. The house was in total disarray. Chloe paced, biting her nails. Brenda looked a decade older, eyes red, makeup ruined in. "Get inside before the neighbors see you looking like a bum," Brenda hissed, yanking his collar. Mark stumbled, dropping his bag. "Mom, you have to help," he begged. Elena destroyed my world. She sold the house, emptied our savings, got me fired. The feds are tearing through my files. "I know she sold the place, you fool," Brenda screamed, dropping the act. I went to get the table and she called the cops. A restraining order. I cannot show my face at the club. Chloe whipped around. "Jackson is acting strange too," Chloe yelled, pointing at Mark. "He keeps asking about our network and making dark remarks about your money. Elena outsmarted us all. You promised a scheme to take her cash. Instead, you left a federal paper trail and let an auditor ruin us. You were supposed to be the genius." Mark wiped grime from his brow, stunned. They did not care about him. They only wanted status and my accounts. "Stop yelling and help me fix this," Mark barked, rage replacing his panic. "We need to find her. If I can get her in a room, I can twist her into dropping it. She is my wife. She still loves me. I can control her." Brenda laughed, bitter and harsh. "You cannot control anything," she snapped. "But you were right. We find her tonight." Brenda grabbed her black card and pulled out her phone. "I am calling an elite private investigator," she announced. "I do not care what it costs or how he bypasses her firewalls. We are ending this nightmare." Her card worked. By 9 the next morning, the investigator handed them an envelope with my new address. He traced the property transfer to my luxury rental. Brenda shoved Mark into her SUV, Chloe piling into the back. They raced toward the hills. Mark rehearsed his act. He planned to use our daughter as a weapon, claiming my mood made me unstable. He would demand I drop the complaint and unlock his funds. He actually thought he could win. They expected an easy win. Instead, Brenda slammed on her expensive brakes. The car skidded to a halt before the iron gates of my complex. This was a private, guarded enclave. 2 armed officers stepped from the booth. Mark rolled his window down, projecting his usual arrogance. "Open the gate," he ordered. "We are here to see my wife." "Open the gates," he barked. The guard did not flinch, hand near his belt. "Sir, this is private property," he said, voice steady. "You are not on the guest list. Turn back." Mark turned beet red. His ego, already shattered by the layoff, finally snapped. He shoved his car door open and stormed the entrance. "Do you know who I am?" Mark screamed, pointing at the guard. "I am a top executive, and that is my wife inside." Brenda pushed past him, losing her poise. She gripped the iron bars, shaking them. "Let us in," she shrieked. "She is holding my grandbaby hostage. I will ruin this company." Chloe jumped out, phone held high. "I am recording your illegal behavior," Chloe yelled, ignoring the signs. "I will blast this on social media." The guards did not budge. A screeching family of elites meant nothing. The lead guard took a step back. "You have 15 seconds to clear the gate before I use pepper spray and press trespassing charges," he warned. The guard hit the direct line to my villa. I was relaxing, cradling Maya, sipping iced tea. That harsh, intrusive ring shattered the calm. I picked up. "Miss Elena," the head guard rumbled. "We have 3 hostile intruders at the gate. They are harassing my staff and demanding entry." I had already signaled backup. Should I call the police to have them hauled away? Looking at my sleeping girl, a rush of power hit me. The trap was set, exactly where I wanted them. "No," I replied, a cold smile forming. "Keep them there. I am coming down to handle this myself." I hung up and tucked Maya into her crib. The nanny was nearby, so I slipped into my closet. Off came the loungewear. On went a sharp navy blazer and heels. I touched up my lipstick and caught my reflection. I did not look like the broken woman my husband left 2 weeks ago. I looked like a CEO in total command of her empire. Folder in hand, I strode toward the main gates. The air was crisp, but the shrieking of my toxic in-laws was clear. Chloe was filming like a maniac, and Brenda was rattling the bars. Mark stood behind them, looking pathetic, his jacket caked in dust. He was sweating, pale and terrified. When Brenda spotted me, her eyes burned with hate. "There she is!" Brenda shrieked, pointing through the iron. "You psycho! Open this gate! Explain why you stole his money and froze his accounts!" I did not rush. I walked with slow, deliberate clicks of my heels. I stopped just out of reach as my security team flanked me. I ignored the screaming and locked my eyes on Mark. He was shaking like a leaf. I shoved a thick legal file at the guard. "Give this to my ex-husband," I said. He slid it through the bars. Mark's hands shook so violently he barely held the pages. "Read it," I commanded. My voice cut through the silence. He fumbled with the clasp. Brenda and Chloe leaned in, desperate to see. The first page was a formal divorce filing. Beneath that was an emergency court order giving me full custody of Maya, citing financial abuse and federal charges. Mark tried his old act. "Mom, don't look," he stammered, reaching for the papers. "She is lying. She lost it after the surgery. She is framing me because she is jealous of my success." I stepped closer, smiling coldly. "You are broke, Mark." "That property is held in my private trust," I stated. "You never owned one brick, and you are not being framed. You are being investigated by federal agents for wire fraud." Brenda grabbed him, trembling. "What is she talking about?" she demanded. "I will tell you," I said. "While I was in surgery, your golden boy forged my signature to take a $150,000 loan. That is why he was fired, but that is not all. He drained $80,000 from his own daughter's college fund to buy his assistant a Porsche." "That is a lie!" Mark screamed, turning bright red. "She is lying!" "Look at page 3, I instructed. Brenda snatched the folder and flipped through it. The registration proved the car was bought with money stolen from Maya. Chloe dropped her phone, her jaw hitting the floor as the facts sank in. Mark reached for the folder, but Brenda slapped his hand away. Her perfect son was gone. He was not a victim, he was a broke, unemployed criminal who robbed his own baby. "You promised me this was under control," Brenda whispered, looking at him with pure disgust. "He is a pathological liar," I said softly, "and now he is your problem." I turned to walk away, but a black SUV pulled up, blocking their exit. My final move had arrived. Chloe didn't even look at the car. Her brain could not handle the truth. She chose to cling to her family's toxicity instead of facing reality. She lunged at the gate, face twisted with rage. "You are a monster, Elena," she screeched. "He is your husband. You are ruining his life over a car and a loan. You are evil." I did not flinch. I just watched, fascinated by the mental gymnastics she was doing to defend a man who stole from an infant. Before I could move, the SUV door swung open. Marcus stepped out, looking tired but steady. Chloe's face lit up with hope. "Marcus, thank God!" she yelled, pointing at me. "You have to help us. Elena has completely lost it. She is making up lies about federal crimes and will not let us inside." "Tell them to open this gate so we can handle this like a family." Marcus ignored his frantic sister. He walked with heavy, purposeful steps toward the iron gates, his eyes locked on mine. I gave a subtle nod to the guard. A sharp click echoed, and the pedestrian door swung wide. Marcus stepped into our secure perimeter. The heavy gate latched shut. He stood by my side, a wall against the chaos. Chloe stepped back, pale. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she whispered. "Why support her?" Marcus dropped his briefcase, popped the locks, and pulled out a thick file. He looked at his wife of 6 years with nothing but cold, hard detachment. "I am standing with the truth," Marcus said, voice icy. "I stand with the woman betrayed while recovering from surgery, and I am done with this family of enablers." He slid the file through the bars into Chloe's shaking hands. "Yesterday, I ran a deep forensic scan of our home network. I found more than just fake mortgage papers, Chloe. I found your deleted texts. You knew about his young mistress. You enabled him and scrubbed the trail on my servers. You brought wire fraud into our own house." Chloe went white. She opened the folder, lip trembling. "I will not raise my kids around such abuse," Marcus stated. "I am filing for divorce. The papers include my bid for full custody. I have already locked you out of our accounts." The street went dead silent. That arrogant family finally crumbled. Brenda clutched the proof of her son's crimes, gasping for air. Mark was on his knees, terrified of the looming charges. Chloe stood frozen, sobbing, realizing her loyalty to her brother cost her everything, her husband, her home, her kids. Gone. I gave Marcus a nod. The enablers were trapped in their own hell. We walked toward my estate, leaving them behind. 8 months have passed since that day. Those screams were the last I heard of them. Federal agents move fast when you hand them a perfect dossier on corporate fraud. Mark never got to drag me into a messy court battle. They indicted him less than 3 weeks after he returned from his trip. Faced with digital logs and forged signatures, his lawyer pushed for a plea deal. The judge showed no mercy to a man who stole from his own daughter to pay for an affair. Mark is serving 3 years in federal prison now. He traded suits for a jumpsuit and a cold cell. His mistress never visited. Brenda ruined herself trying to save him, selling everything for legal fees. Once the money dried up, her friends vanished. She is buried in debt, living in a cramped studio, isolated by pride. Chloe faced a similar fate. Marcus kept his word. He finalized the divorce, kept primary custody, and evicted her. Without his big executive salary to cover her lifestyle, she was forced into retail work just to keep the lights on. That house of cards collapsed the second they hit reality. Now I sit in the sun of my garden. A breeze rustles the trees. I sip tea, enjoying this peace. Nearby, my son Leo crawls toward his blocks. He is almost one, thriving and safe from the toxicity of my past. Marcus sits next to me, and we smile as Leo giggles. Marcus is more than a partner. He is family. We walked through the fire and survived. He brings his kids over every weekend, making sure our children grow up with real love. My business is stronger than ever, and my trust is solid. Looking back at that woman in the hospital, I barely recognize her. It is easy to let toxic people convince you that you are weak when you are hurt. They count on your silence to hide the abuse, but once you see your own value, that power dies. You owe nothing to toxic people, regardless of the history. Gather your proof, secure your money, and tear down the life they built on your back. Silence is a weapon. The real win? Walking away and letting them drown in their own mess. You are stronger than they say. I want your story. Drop a comment and share your own survival moment. When did you finally realize your worth and walk away? Tap like if you choose your peace today. Subscribe to join a community that refuses to be a victim. Your new life is waiting. Go take it.